Good evening, Who Dat Nation, and happy Wednesday on a Thursday to our Bayou Blitz family. As always, Brendan Boylan and I have decided to exert our power over space and time and move your Wednesday show to a Thursday. So we'd like to welcome you all to, if you're joining us live, to your Bayou Blitz show this week. I hope everybody is doing well. I am Bob Rose. I am one of your hosts to your Bayou Blitz podcast. Joining me is my partner in crime and getting ready to head out to beach life himself, Brendan Boylan. Happy Wednesday on a Thursday, Brendan.
Yeah, back at you. Yeah, world tour continues because I get actual beach vacation and then I fly to Florida for work. So all sorts of warm weather for me. Um, as Bob said, Brendan Boylan, Katie's fiance. Since I guess we're going to continue trying
Oh,
that.
I forgot to do that. I am your host, but Lauren's husband, Bob Rose.
There you go. There you go. Perfect. Perfect. And happy birthday, Katie. It was yesterday.
Happy birthday, Katie.
I hope.
Well, wait a minute. Is she tuning in? Because if she's not, we got to rewind again and take back our intros.
Maybe, I don't know. I guess we'll find out soon enough. But hopefully you enjoyed our night out last night. That's the main reason for moving things around. And thank you to her sister-in-law for exclusive tickets to a light show in Charlotte. So we were
Awesome.
So yeah, it was fun. It was fun. They actually take the baseball field in Charlotte, and it's you walk through the concourse, and it's all lit, and they have different things going on. They have an actual ice hockey rink in the middle of the baseball field, and they're playing outdoor games this year between the local college teams and the local minor league teams. And they had sledding, all that stuff. Kids love that stuff. But it was really nice to be able to go out and see that. And then you get the skyline and everything too. So you got lights all around you. It was really beautiful. But nonetheless, we will be talking about things here in Charlotte. But unfortunately for Panthers fans, the Panthers have been less than beautiful. We still have the New Orleans Saints. Well, I want to open the show like this. We kind of talked about it a little bit before we got on. This week, particularly for New Orleans, is odd for a multitude of reasons. As you read on the bottom, it was really weird to type this out here on the bottom of the screen. Saints playoff hopes. That was weird, but they really are on the line against the worst team in football in terms of win-loss column. But on top of that, you don't know who's playing quarterback this week because of injuries. And we'll get into, do we want to call it the injury list or the injury novel this week? Because we're right back at the novel level.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that. But particularly, I want to talk about some of the interviews we got since Sunday. Because as journalists, it is our job to answer or to ask tough questions. However, I think sometimes there is I don't want to say line because it's not like lines got crossed. But typically when you ask specific questions, you ask them to the player in which things were affected. So what I'm getting at is multiple players for the New Orleans Saints were asked about the booing of Derek Carr in the first quarter of Sunday's loss to the Detroit Lions. Now, typically, you'd ask that to, in my brain, you'd ask that to Derek Carr, Jameis Winston, who replaced him, maybe even Taysom Hill, because Taysom was involved in that. Maybe the head coach. But the wonderful journalists in New Orleans, and I mean that, I really do, that's not sarcasm, the wonderful journalists down there decided to ask other players in the locker room on whether it was warranted or not, which puts players in a weird spot. But I want to really zoom in and focus on two. And one was later, and it was more recent, and that was Alvin Kamara's response, which the one thing I love about Alvin, and I have in his quick math tells me, how many years has he been in New Orleans? 7. Wow, we're old.
Yeah.
We are old. I've always loved Alvin's honesty and truthfulness to the media. You know, the first few years, especially with the tag team interviews with Mark Ingram, may have came off as goofy to some people. but you knew you were getting a true and honest answer. And I do think Alvin's matured in that over the years as well. He gave a true, mature, honest answer, Bob. And we're seeing a lot more of that out of Alvin Kamara. There's Bob. Hey, disappeared and came back. Ooh, magic trick. We're just keeping you on your toes, guys. But Alvin gave an honest response. What were your thoughts? Starting with Alvin, we'll get to the other guys here in a second. What was your thoughts on Alvin's response to being asked about the booze?
I loved it. And I'm like you, I've always loved the way Alvin Kamara has candidly handled the media. But what I've liked about Kamara, especially this year, is it feels like he has stepped to the forefront in being a more vocal team leader. Not something that we've come to expect from Alvin, and not something that Alvin has had to do. But I think Alvin Kamara has become the primary voice of this team at this point. Because we've heard him speak out about his frustrations, and about how that's leaked over into the rest of the team. And it feels like it does feel like he's the voice of the team. And the fact that Alvin responded the way he did, to the Derek Carr and booing question, it tells me. Obviously, there are several players on this team that are frustrated with the way things are going, and the results that they're putting up. But most specifically, and it feels like just a week ago or 2 weeks ago, we were saying the same kind of thing when Alvin was asked a question about it was either Dennis Allen specifically or about the coaching staff in general. And you could tell that Alvin's very frustrated. And I think you were one of the ones that have openly voiced your concern about the possibility of Alvin Kamara being so frustrated that he requests a trade out of New Orleans this offseason. Now, let's not put the cart before the horse. Let's just get through this season first. We're not here to address any, could this happen or would this happen this offseason, with any specific players. But I think it's very poignant, that Alvin Kamara had this kind of response about his quarterback, towards the New Orleans Saints fans specifically. He is one of the small handful of players that seem to be siding with the frustration, boiling over frustration of the Saints fan base, rather than just politically answering questions, in a very vanilla sort of way. And it tells me, I know a lot of people have either wondered or just come to the probably incorrect assumption that Dennis Allen has lost this locker room. I think the more accurate question would be, has Derek Carr lost his teammates? And some of these type of responses make you think that yes, he has. It's not that Kamara or anybody else isn't going to play hard, because Kamara's playing his tail off right now. So it's not that I'm going to sit here and accuse Kamara or anybody else of not playing hard for Allen or Carr or whomever it is. But it does make you believe that he might be one of the players that are wondering, how much is Derek Carr really contributing, in a positive way to these New Orleans Saints?
Yeah, and going back to what you said about, and again, we don't want to open this can of worms quite yet. I said this a few weeks ago when Alvin was in Charlotte, and from a distance, I saw Alvin in Charlotte. I fully believe he's a guy that wants to be a lifer, which we don't see a lot in sports anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And we've talked about Cameron Jordan being a lifer, as well, but I think ultimately he wants to be here. I mean, he's talked so openly on his love for New Orleans, like his rookie year, his second year riding his bikes to the stadium. One thing that makes New Orleans special is a lot of these guys have the ability just to walk the streets back home and not really be bothered. People ask for photos, autographs, but it's not to a point where you don't feel comfortable just walking down the street.
Yeah, they don't get mobbed. They don't get dinners constantly interrupted. Nothing, no garbage like that.
And that's what's one thing that makes New Orleans extremely special. I think Kamara wants to be here. But I'm concerned because it seems like every year we have this conversation with Alvin, and I don't think it's his fault, but I think every year we're starting to have a conversation is how much more frustrated is Alvin Kamara,
Yeah.
right? And 19 was injuries. It was evident. The injuries more than anything frustrated him. 20 didn't see a whole lot of frustration out of Alvin Kamara, but since 2020, we've seen it progress and progress, and I feel for him. I want to go to another part of what you said was the question should be more, has Derek Carr lost the faith of his teammates more so than Dennis Allen losing the locker room? I do think the answer is yes, both. Clearly, Derek has lost the fan base.
Yeah.
Very clearly. And we'll jump into that too as we talk about quarterbacks and where Derek Carr stands in terms of his injury status for this week. Chris Olave has been tagged as a guy who may not be the biggest fan of Derek Carr. He did not help his case this week. When he was asked about the booing, he gave the politically correct answer initially, but you could hear in the tone of his voice he didn't even want to be asked about it.
Yeah.
But then they said, well, were the boos warranted? And he kind of chuckled and smirked. Now, if you want to play devil's advocate, when I have been asked stupid questions before, I have smirked and chuckled and laughed.
Same.
Everybody has. But in this particular instance, he might have been laughing because it was a stupid question in his mind because it's so blatantly obvious. There's a lot of reasons he could have chuckled and laughed there. Bob, how did you read Chris Olave's post-game interview in regards to were the boos warranted?
For the most part, I felt the way that you just stated that, Chris Olave and Cam Jordan is another infamous Saints player for just openly laughing at a reporter for a question. And I did feel that his response was more tilted that direction. But the fact that it was Derek Carr and like you, I was looking at Olave's facial expression when it was asked, not so much his verbal response. And that's another token of evidence, in my opinion, that Derek Carr just doesn't, that Derek Carr's teammates just don't have his back, at least not completely. And you have to wonder, is that because of Carr's aloofness towards his teammates? Now, we don't know what goes on behind the scenes inside the locker room, when reporters aren't at practice, and on team workout days. We don't know what goes on there, so we don't know the true nature of the relationship between Carr and any individual teammate or his team as a whole. But we have seen loads of evidence that about how Carr treats his teammates out on the field, on the sideline, and Chris Olave has been I'm not going to say whipping boy, but at the center of that dartboard when it comes to that kind of thing, because of different mini confrontations between the receiver and the quarterback. So if a quarterback can't get along with his receivers, and the quarterback's teammates don't have his back 100%, you have to wonder about the chemistry of that locker room.
Taking a step further, since you said if you can't get along with your receivers, I think this was where this is going. Another Ohio State receiver seemed to make his opinions known.
Yeah.
Via X or Twitter or whatever we're calling it at this point. Michael Thomas with some tweets. X's? Tweets. We're still calling them tweets.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
Otherwise, just sounds too. I can't even say dirty because I would get a chuckle out of that. It sounds blatantly stupid. It will be Twitter to me until I hear a name that sticks in my brain.
Yeah, I was about to say when I said exes, I'm thinking first thing that comes to my mind, George Strait. All my exes live in Texas. Anyway, I digress. Mike Thomas was pretty blunt on Twitter, and about halfway through the game, his accounts vanished,
Yeah.
deactivated. And Dennis Allen got asked about this, and he said, "We'll handle it internally." What I find really interesting about this, because this isn't the first time social media has pointed towards Michael Thomas
Mhm.
and Derek Carr, and there being some issues there. Even was it last week or the week before, he liked a comment on Instagram about being back in New Orleans with a new head coach and a new quarterback. Anyway, I find this all interesting because the recruitment of Derek Carr to New Orleans, a big player in all that was Michael Thomas. So to say you've lost the locker room may even be an understatement, because it appears right now the guy that vouched for you, the guy that tried his very best to pull you away from, remember, the New York Jets were the other team very interested. The guy that did his best to make sure you landed in New Orleans and not New York, Michael Thomas. According to Derek Carr, according to Michael Thomas, according to coaching staff, everybody. It's not like this is just a one out there report that somebody's ran with. Like, it has came from the horse's mouth that Michael Thomas was a big part of this. If you've lost the trust and the belief of someone that went to bat for you after just, we can't even say 13 weeks because this stuff started a couple weeks ago. Let's just say 10 weeks. If that's all it took for a guy who went to bat for you to lose trust, was there really ever trust there to begin with? Was there ever really a sturdy relationship to begin with? And I ask that because of this, and this is different. Sports relationships and working relationships, much different from personal relationships.
Oh, yeah.
Right? 120%. But I went to bat for you, Bob, in certain situations.
What are you trying to tell? What are you trying to tell the public now, Brendan?
And vice versa. Like, we have looked out for each other in certain opportunities. We've went to bat for each other. Job references, whatever. However you guys want to pitch that in your own little brains, right? But if Bob and I and we have worked together for a long time, if one of us went to bat for the other, and it only took 10 episodes of the Bayou Blitz for us to completely turn on each other, I think there'd be issues. I would question, was there anything there in the first place? That's kind of the question I have now, is you can make the pitch. You can say, I've seen this guy play. I've played against him. I think he's going to be a great fit here. And sometimes it doesn't take that long. How many times have you guys taken a new job? I'm sure somebody in the comments has taken a job and left that job within a month because it wasn't what you thought it was going to be. Bob, you're not in the comments. Maybe you are in the comments. I don't know. But yeah, everybody, like, there's plenty of people that have done that. But in football, we talk about guys getting 3-year periods, like head coaches. We talk about guys getting at least the full season. But this is starting to, it's really starting to smell like a dumpster fire. And I'm not saying the end all be all is Michael Thomas being mad at his quarterback or, tweeting things, because Mike has always tweeted things. He's never had issues with quarterbacks because he had Drew for so long. But that's my concern. But your point, Bob, your top 2 receivers have essentially said it without saying it and have said it to an extent. They're not happy with the choice at quarterback. Is it professional from the receivers? But nonetheless, those should be the tightest guys,
Yep.
quarterbacks and the receivers. And there's very clearly some drama. Like Taylor Swift breakup song drama going on right now. What are your thoughts on Mike Thomas?
Yeah, and listen, you don't have to be friends with your teammates. You don't even have to like your teammates. I've had a lot of teammates that I didn't like. Had a lot of teammates that I'm positive did not like me. But you at least have to be professional with each other during your sport. You have to recognize that you're working towards a common goal, and more often than not, professionals are able to do that. And I'm not saying that Chris Olave and Derek Carr, or Michael Thomas and Derek Carr, or Alvin Kamara and Derek Carr, that they aren't able to do that, because Alvin Kamara still putting up nice numbers. Chris Olave putting up very nice numbers. Michael Thomas, we question, you and I and many others have questioned openly the way Michael Thomas was being used. That's more on Pete Carmichael than Derek Carr, at least I think so. So it's not like they're unable to work with each other yet. But when you have these guys publicly taking shots at you, and that's what Michael Thomas was. I mean, that was crystal clear. If you folks read any of those tweets, and you're targeting a person's performance rather than, you know what, I don't like the guy. I don't even want to share a cab ride or an appetizer before dinner with this guy, but I'm able to gut it up and go onto the football field with him. No, these guys are taking shots at each other's performances. Mike talking about how Derek is missing, ignoring wide open receivers. Alvin and Chris's reactions to Derek personally getting booed off of the field, that kind of thing. That's performance related. That's professionally related. We talked earlier about the possible disconnect between Chris Olave and Derek Carr, with those on the field scrapes, and that the two of them really needed to have a behind the scenes sit down and hash it out. Well, it's clear that the issue is much deeper than just between Derek Carr and Chris Olave. It's multiple teammates. And if it's multiple teammates targeted at one specific player, it's fairly clear who the outlying problem is. Not that everybody else is innocent in this, but it's clear that there is not harmony at all within the New Orleans Saints offense, and that's a real problem.
And for those of you who did not see the posts before the Michael Thomas count was deactivated, here's the gist of it. Thomas posted that A.T. Perry was wide open. That was the first interception of the game. Went through Juwan Johnson's hands. Perry open on the far side of the field, that play, wide open. Thomas posted a little bit after that, your eyes don't work, you get people hurt, it's no mystery. And then concluded with what you permit, you promote, what you allow, you encourage, what you condone, you own, all direct shots towards Derek Carr.
Yeah, meanwhile, he said that he posted that what you condone, you own. He sent it and then deactivated. So maybe a little maturity level needs to be raised there too, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. That's always been Mike, though.
Yeah.
And I also find this all interesting as well because Michael Thomas is in a contract year.
Yes.
And Mike was a guy, and we talked about it all last year. We didn't think Michael Thomas was coming back. We thought it was between him and Jameis. If you and I were betting money, we would be very poor right now.
Yeah.
Poorer than we already are. But nonetheless, they both came back. So I just find it all interesting. It's almost, I don't want to say he's asking to be let go because I don't get that vibe. I get the vibe of I'm extremely frustrated. Um, but he could very well see himself not on this team um, next year. I don't think it would be a surprise to many if he wasn't on the roster next year. Let's continue with quarterback talk. And we talked about it a little bit post game. I said in almost the same thing that Alvin said the other day was that is something I'd never experienced before. The just the open booing of one quarterback and then the cheers for the other. I want to ask. I honestly just want to ask flat out. What do you think the odds are that if Derek Carr plays this week, and for those who have not seen the injury report, we will still go through the whole injury report, but for at least Derek Carr, Dennis Allen said the only thing holding him back right now is the concussion.
Mhm.
Personally, if it's Thursday and you're still in concussion protocol for the second concussion you've had in the course of a month, if it was my brain, my concussion, I probably wouldn't play on Sunday, personally. But there's a good chance Carr does play, from what it sounds like. If Carr plays this Sunday, what are the odds you think he gets booed again?
100%. Unless Carr comes out, and yes, I agree with you. I think that it certainly looks like Derek Carr is going to be playing. He participated in what was termed as a limited participant in practice both Wednesday and Thursday, and personally, the man's health aside, I said that if Dennis Allen had any faith at all in Jameis Winston, he would have went to Jameis, Derek, Taysom, and the rest of the team on Monday and said, "We're going to go with Jameis Winston. Let Derek Carr rest up that concussion, and we're going to gear our game plan around Jameis Winston from the start of the week." He didn't do that. So if Derek cannot play, remember what Derek does well is very different than what Jameis does well. So Dennis Allen, yet again, is doing this team absolutely no favors whatsoever. But back to Carr. Yes, I do believe he'll play at this point, and I think the chances that he'll get booed louder than what we heard last Sunday are 100%. Unless, now when Derek Carr went out against the Lions, remember, he had completed 15 straight balls and 16 of 17 between the second and third quarters. So, I mean, not all those balls were on target. A couple were short, but yeah, the receivers, specifically Chris Olave, made a couple of great plays. But nonetheless, they were completions. So Derek Carr was playing pretty well, at the time of his injury. So unless Derek comes out and completes another 10, 12, 15 straight, to give the fans absolutely nothing to boo about, from the first ball that hits the ground, whether it's a drop pass or not, whether it's a pressure or not, whatever reason, those fans are going to come out of the woodwork and absolutely shake that Superdome roof. This fan base is completely soured on Derek Carr, and I'm not saying it's unfounded. I agree with most of it, but that's just there is zero give for Derek Carr right now, and you're going to see that on Sunday.
I'm going to take you a step further, Bob. I don't think it takes an incomplete pass. I think it is the first time the Saints take the field.
Probably.
I think that there is a loud boo around the Superdome. And for those of you who want to go boo Derek Carr, remember, you can go on Master, StubHub, whatever your ticket site is, and get tickets in the 600 levels for a whopping $7 as of today before fees. Bob, I haven't been to the Superdome in a few years for a game just to enjoy, right? I don't remember a time in my life that tickets have been that cheap. I should rephrase that. In the time that I have been able to purchase tickets myself, so say the last 12 years, I don't remember tickets ever being that cheap. And I think that speaks volumes as well. When people cannot even get remotely close to what they paid for their tickets back, I think that speaks volumes. But yeah, you guys can go boo if you want. I really do think it's going to be from the very first offensive series, as soon as they march out on the field. And what I think is really weird about this too, just going back to not just the fan base with Derek Carr, because let's face it, Derek had huge shoes to fill.
Mm-hmm.
He really did. I felt bad for whoever was going to be after Drew Brees. And we had those 2 years of not really knowing who it was. And Jameis got hurt, and Andy Dalton got the run, and Simeon got the run, and Taysom got some run in at it. But then you throw $150 million at a guy. That's a lot of pressure. Now, has he performed anywhere close to average? Like, no. He's thrown, 11 touchdowns this year? Not going to cut it. Even if you're not replacing the greatest quarterback in franchise history. Like, that's just not going to cut it. But what I find interesting is, even going back to when he signed, the embrace of Derek Carr was not the same embrace when Taysom Hill was named starting quarterback. It was not the same embrace as when Jameis Winston was named starting quarterback. Both those guys got a lot more, in my eyes, social media, all that stuff, got a lot more love from the fan base and their teammates than Derek Carr has. And I know things have soured, and my vision might be skewed going all the way back. But I felt more, maybe so with Jameis and not Taysom, because there was some about Taysom as well in the locker room. But I felt like both those guys were received better, at least by the fan base, even when they were not playing well, than Derek Carr. Interested in your thoughts.
I don't know if I agree with that. You're talking at the initial signing of Derek Carr, right?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I feel like Derek Carr definitely got a better initial reception than what specifically Jameis Winston did. Because a lot of New Orleans fans saw quite a bit of Jameis Winston, at least 2 games a year playing him, playing him as divisional rivals with Tampa Bay, and they saw a guy who could create big plays, but cause just as many big plays for the opposing defense with interceptions, fumbles, sacks, etc. So that there was a. I'm not going to say split down the middle, but there was a very noticeable divide in the fan base over Jameis Winston. I did not notice that same kind of divide when it came to Derek Carr. There was the people that, oh my God, Derek Carr is going to be the savior. He's going to take this offense, this team to the next level. And then the other side of, well, he was never a winner with the Raiders. Why do we think he's going to be a winner now? I didn't see the violent, verbally violent anyway, verbally violent differences that I saw with Derek Carr, or that I saw with Jameis Winston comparatively to Derek Carr.
I want to throw this up and get your opinions on this, because it's more your time than it was mine. Gumbo throws out there, remember when the Superdome crowd cheering when Wade Wilson went down with an injury, Jim Mora went off on the fans during the postgame. Ugly times then and now. How do you compare that Saints memory to witnessing what we did the last week?
It's apples and oranges, when it comes to the overall fan base, because obviously back in those days, social media didn't exist at all. I do remember the Superdome, fans turning on this guy right behind me, Jim Everett. And you're probably old enough to remember how the Saints fans reacted to Aaron Brooks. Now, if there were social media back then, either with Wilson, Everett, Brooks, I think that it would have been just as ugly as it has been with Derek Carr, maybe even more so. Because especially the fans' treatment of Aaron Brooks. His last 2 years in New Orleans was absolutely deplorable. And I'll just go out and say it. I thought a lot of it. I believe to this day that a lot of it was racially motivated, which makes it even more deplorable. But Wilson, Everett, Carr, they're all white quarterbacks, obviously. And I'm not trying to make this a black or white thing at all. I stand by what I said about maybe not all, certainly not all of it, but some of it was racially based with Aaron Brooks, but all of it turned personal with Jim, with Wilson, with Brooks, and now with Carr. There's no need for it to turn personal, and just as degrading as it is. Okay, be unhappy with the quarterback play. Be unhappy with the coach. Be unhappy with the team. Boo your head off if you're in the Superdome. Don't cheer for injuries. When a guy, Derek Carr, when a guy goes out with an injury, don't accuse him of faking it so he can get out of a loss and his stats look better. That's a very comparable to reaction to that we saw on social media compared to the cheering when Wilson got hurt, or the cheering whenever it got banged up, or the cheering or jeering, anytime Aaron Brooks literally did anything. So if you're going to compare in that way, I think all four of these quarterbacks, have gone through similar circumstances, and I imagine that the social media responses to any of the other preceding three quarterbacks that I mentioned would have been very similar to what we have seen over Derek Carr. And again, when you get personal, when you take your hatred to a personal level, that makes you a deplorable and pathetic human being.
I don't want to spend the whole day on quarterbacks, but that's obviously the topic right now. And we'll find out over the next couple days what's going on. I have no doubt in my mind at this point that if Carr can get through concussion protocol, which honestly, I know it's like a 5-step process. I have no idea how the process works. I don't think anybody knows how the process works. If he gets cleared, he's playing.
Yeah.
No and ifs or buts. I do believe he will get booed. I do believe a lot of it is deserved. But they're playing Carolina. And Carolina's defense much better than their offense. Poor Bryce Young is I don't even know if it's a fair comparison, but Bryce Young and Archie Manning have a lot in common right now. Running for their life.
Yeah.
But man, if he has a bad performance against Carolina. And if Carolina walks out of the Superdome with a victory, I don't imagine the following week, which also at home, goes very well for about anybody. If the Superdome is even full. So let's talk about Carolina. Carolina just fired their head coach, along with some offensive assistants. That surprised me. More so than the head coach. Like, the head coach did not surprise me. Like, that was coming. Like, Frank Reich was the 4th shortest tenured head coach in NFL history.
Wow.
11 games. Fun fact. I don't know the other 3 off the top of my head. Because my first one, when that came out, I was like, Paterno, I was like, nah, why am I mixing up names? Atlanta Falcons head coach.
Bobby Petrino.
Thank you. I was close. I was like, that's not it. Like, I thought Petrino would have been there. I was like, okay, that one's got to be there. No, that was 13 games.
Wow.
So less than that. And that was a disaster in Atlanta that year, too. But no, they fired like Deuce Staley, who was the former Eagles running back, who was on their staff. One of the McCown brothers was let go as well from that staff. Those things surprised me. Carolina, after all of that hoopla, actually played a pretty competitive game against Tampa Bay last week.
Yep.
It wasn't perfect. Obviously, they lost. It wasn't that pretty, but it was the most energy and almost like pulse of an offense that the Panthers have really had all year. They're getting healthy on defense. So, Bob, with all that said, it's been a long time since the Saints played the Panthers. That happened way earlier in the year. Completely different teams. It feels like a lifetime ago with how this season has gone for both franchises. What scares you about the Panthers this go around?
First of all, the way the New Orleans Saints have been playing, any opponent scares me, even a 1-11 Carolina Panthers team. But I mean, yeah, realistically, it is. I agree with you. It is Carolina's defense, that has me on edge much more than their offense. I'm with you. I am surprised that they fired Frank Reich after only 11 games. You figure a coach would get at least a season and a half, before ownership turns on him. But this is an offense, Carolina's, that has scored 21 or less points all 12 in all 12 games, or 11 to 12 games, excuse me, and including in their last 6. So if you're going to let the head coach go, it's because your offense has been so abysmal, and he's supposedly an offensive mind. Well, he is an offensive-oriented coach. So if you're going to let the head coach go, you might as well make a clean sweep and get rid of the entire offensive staff. Mickey Loomis, Mrs. Benson, I hope you're listening. But Carolina's defense, as you said, they are getting healthy. They have cornerback J.C. Horn back. I believe they're going to get defensive back Jeremy Chin back. And what we have seen from the Panthers against the Saints the last 4 or 5 times they faced is that front 7 of Carolina's give the New Orleans offensive line fits. Even when the Saints offensive line was playing well, they're able to get pressure off the edge, with Yator Matos, and especially Brian Burns, Derek Brown up the middle. Frankie Lavu has been an absolute beast, against the New Orleans Saints. He's making plays left and right every time these two teams play, and Carolina has been very, very good against the pass. Now, granted, they're like second or third in pass attempts against as far as fewest, because a lot of teams have had success on the ground against Carolina. But as we know, New Orleans has struggled at the line of scrimmage. Even with their pass blocking having been improved the last 4 or 5 weeks, the Saints are still having trouble running the ball consistently. If they do so again and need to rely on the pass, with a banged-up Derek Carr, a depleted receiving core that's still going to be without Michael Thomas, without Rashid Shaheed, and with pass protection issues, maybe not as much on the edge, but certainly interior, that bodes for big problems for this Saints offense. So just because, and to your point, the Panthers, they're 31st in scoring defense, but they're 7th in total yards allowed. One of the reasons why the point output is such a drastic differential is because the Panthers are turning the ball over on offense, leaving opponents short fields, things like that. Carolina has actually shown some signs of life defensively, a lot of the year, and as you said, even as recently as last week against Tampa Bay, this is a team that's still playing hard. You have to question that about the New Orleans Saints. And if you're the Saints and you let the Carolina Panthers hang around long enough, and you end up in a dogfight in the late third, early portions of the fourth quarter, man, that fan base is going to turn on you like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, by no means. Looking at the Carolina Panthers record, some fans might be like, okay, this is the game the Saints get right. Looking at how this Panthers team plays, no. It's not one of these games where, the Saints are going to get right. The Saints might get right in the win column, and I don't expect the Panthers to come out and torch the Saints.
No.
This is going to be a super ugly football game if you like offense. Defensively, it might go better than people think. I don't know what the over-under is right now, but I don't even have to see it. I would say, like, take the under. Take the under.
I might take the under if the over-under was 20 points, I'll be honest.
Ooh. But in all honesty, I mean, Bob threw the numbers out at you guys. What? All but one game, the Panthers have failed to score over 21 points. Last week, they had a good offensive showing and didn't hit 20 points. It tells you all you need to know. And again, poor Bryce Young. I saw a report that about 4 or 5 weeks into the season, whatever game that was, Andy Dalton started in place of an injured Bryce Young. That the ownership wanted to move forward with Dalton at quarterback the remainder of the season. And Frank Wright said no. And that was part of the reason he got let go. I saw that report. I don't know how much validity there is to that report.
Yeah, because Bryce Young started last week, so yeah, I mean, I question the validity too. But if a coach gets fired after only 11 games, there has to be something going on behind the scenes.
Exactly. And Tepper's got a short temper, but in all honesty, with how bad Bryce was getting banged up those first few weeks and then gets hurt, I'm shocked they didn't go, you know what? Let's protect our first-round pick.
Yeah.
We paid Andy Dalton good money to be a backup, very similar to what the Saints did. Let's let Bryce learn, have some time. Let's let Andy finish out, the season. That's what I would have done. But Bryce has got hit a lot. Mm-hmm. And I have to say this, being here locally and, being in tune with the media here, the one thing that everyone I've talked to has said about Bryce Young is the kid has such a good head on his shoulders and has handled just an awful season the best way anybody could, considering he's been banged up. He hasn't played well. He's gone through a coaching change now. A really professional kid. And that's all fine and well. Unfortunately, being professional doesn't get you a better offensive line.
Right.
And does not get you Miles Sanders from a couple years ago. Because Miles Sanders has been really disappointing for that team too. Anytime you think about the New Orleans Saints receiving corps over, what was that, 2020? Yeah, that was the year Sean kept saying, like, we're comfortable, we like the guys in the room. If you thought that receiving corps was bad, the Panthers might be worse this year. It is really bad. Bryce doesn't have any weapons outside of his tight ends. Hayden Hurst just got hurt. He was back at practice, which shocked me considering the diagnosis he got.
Yeah.
I'm shocked he's playing football at all, considering the diagnosis he got. So thoughts with the Hayden Hurst, who also does a lot of great stuff off the field. If you're not familiar with it, go look it up. A+ type of guy.
And I've always been a big fan of Hayden Hurst, the player too. A couple years ago, I was really pounding the table and hoping the Saints would sign him. When he was a free agent. If Hurst can go, he might actually be a big mismatch for the Saints to handle, because in 3 of the last 4 weeks, they've given up 6 catches and 55 yards, 2 touchdowns to Cole Kmet. 11 catches and 134 yards, and I believe a touchdown to T.J. Hawkinson, and 9 catches for 140 yards, and a touchdown to Sam Laporta. Now, I'm not going to put Hayden Hurst, necessarily in that category, especially with Hawkinson and Laporta. But Hayden Hurst, as I said, I'm a big fan, always have been. He is a good receiving tight end, and as is per typical with this coaching staff, either offensive or defensively, they have shown absolutely zero ability to make adjustments to what other teams are doing well. And they didn't. They weren't able to ever come up with an answer for Kmet, Hawkinson, Laporta. So if Hurst starts victimizing Tyrann Mathieu, Jordan Howden, Demario Davis, Pete Werner, if Pete plays, and the Saints don't make any adjustments to that, it could be another long afternoon for the New Orleans defense. Now, New Orleans defensively against the pass, the numbers are still okay, other than those ugly numbers against the tight ends. And the fact that obviously Joe Woods, Dennis Allen, and the defense decided rushing the passer is no longer important. Where the Saints have struggled, and that's putting them mildly. Let's call a spade a spade. They've gotten gashed on the ground in the last 5-6 games. Carolina wants to run the ball to help keep Bryce Young upright a little bit. And they have the backs on paper to do it. Chuba Hubbard, you and I have always been big fans of. I'm still a fan of Miles Sanders, although I agree with you that he's having an extremely disappointing year. So the Panthers are going to want to run the ball and come out with balance. And again, I said this defensively against Carolina. If you let the Panthers establish any kind of offensive momentum, put a couple scores on the board, or hold the ball for a couple to get 2-3 first downs in a drive, and establish a field position advantage. I can very easily see the New Orleans Saints losing this game. I really can.
And that's the scary thing, because on paper, our favorite term of the whole year, again, this shouldn't be a walkthrough or a cakewalk for the Saints. This is a really favorable matchup. You're at home. Bob has thrown the stat out a lot about how bad the Saints have been at home lately. And that's the definition of a bad team. But you're at home. You're playing a team that just fired their head coach, has had a terrible season, can't put up points. And a team that you've already beat this year. Now, albeit 20-17, but you still beat them already this year at their house. On paper, everything's pointing in your direction. Now, you're right when it comes to the ground game. Let's not forget, Bryce Young's an athlete himself. He's maybe not the scrambling type like Lamar Jackson that you think of, but when I throw Bryce Young in the category, to me it's very similar to a guy like Justin Fields, who has the athletic ability, can take off, will have designed run plays. Obviously, he's a tiny dude. Not going to work the same in the NFL as it did in college, but he has the escapability. He scored on a 2-point conversion with his legs last week against Tampa Bay.
Bryce scrambled for two different 17-yard gains the first time these teams met to keep drives alive. So he's capable, to your point.
And so with that, and again, Miles Sanders, who I think it's 50-50 in the case of his season. Some of it's on him. Some of it's on the fact they have the worst offensive line in football. And then Chuba Hubbard, who, the Saints have been decent, but I don't know if you can even say better, because they've still got gassed in the run. But the interior of the defensive line has been better this year.
Yeah.
Not great, but better.
Yeah.
And though Chuba Hubbard lives there, Chuba can also stretch it. Chuba is a guy who nationally is not going to get a lot of attention, but he's one of those people where if you're a football fanatic or a football sicko, or you play fantasy football, you know that he was a decent pickup earlier this year. And he's a guy that you can rely on more so than Miles Sanders at this point in terms of production. That scares me with the Saints. The biggest thing here, and this is the hardest thing to say out loud because it hasn't happened this year. The Saints just need to get ahead, right? And it sounds simple, but you want Bryce to throw the ball. And they've been bad with the pass rush. But they haven't faced an offensive line this bad. And if you remember the first few weeks of the season, particularly Carl Granderson, field days. And that includes the game against the Panthers.
Yeah.
I'm not saying lightning is going to strike twice, but if you have an opportunity to kind of turn some things around, get some confidence in your pass rushers, a game like this is a really good opportunity. So major if, the Saints can come out in the first quarter and establish any type of lead, like anything, and hold a lead into the second half. Again, I know to some of you, that is like me asking Santa Claus for $100 million. It's not, it's just not going to happen. But if they could do that, they're going to put themselves in a really good position to win the football game.
They are, but I'll tell you, the pass rush on both sides is going to be key. Yeah, coming into Week 14, the Chicago Bears had the fewest sacks in the National Football League with 17.
Still do.
Yeah. The New Orleans Saints, they have 18 sacks. The Carolina Panthers, they have 19 sacks. So whoever is able to pressure, in my opinion, whoever is able to pressure the quarterback better and stop the other team's running game, or at least contain it, that's who's going to win this game. In other words, not only take control of the line of scrimmage, but dominate on the edges and be stout against the run inside. I know that's simple X's and O's. But simple X's and O's are something that the New Orleans Saints and obviously the Carolina Panthers have been colossal failures at this season.
You're right. And you know what else scares me? I know Jeremy Chin has not been the same player production-wise as he was his rookie season. It's kind of hard to replicate how good he was.
Mm-hmm.
J.C. Horn has been hurt every year of his NFL career. Like, getting two major pieces back in your secondary against a team that has yet to find a real offensive flow, offensive rhythm, starting to find some confidence in some young linebackers. And though the contract situation is not sorted out, but you're a lot further removed from the Brian Burns situation that was existent back in Week 2. The Panthers defense is not, again, it's not a pushover. It's a team that you look at and you're like, you know what, this could be there's the potential for this to be a scary team defensively. I'm not saying they're going to sit there and shut the Saints out. I'm not saying that they're the best defense the Saints have faced all year. But I'm saying this is a team, and especially because, and we say this all the time, divisional opponents are familiar with each other.
Mm-hmm.
I think all those factors become scary. Bob, before we close it out, we haven't played dot or drop in a while. And I think it's an appropriate time to roll out an old favorite.
Love it.
So, dot or drop. Regardless of who starts at quarterback for the Saints this week, because it is still up in the air, the Saints fail to score at least 24 points this week.
I'm going to dot that. Mainly because what have any of us seen from the Saints offense that makes us believe that they're going to score 24 or more points against anybody? And you're without Rashid Shaheed. You're without Michael Thomas. Chris Olave missed practice today, although it was with an illness, so I expect him to play. Taysom Hill has missed practice Wednesday and Thursday. So you're limping in here with a shorthanded offense, either a concussed quarterback that's been playing poorly or a turnover-prone quarterback that hasn't taken first team snaps all week. Yeah, I'm gonna dot that. Saints do not score 24 points.
Hit me.
All right. If the dot or drop, the Carolina Panthers win this game. If the Carolina Panthers win this game, Dennis Allen gets fired on Monday.
Drop. And I hate it hurts to say it, Bob. It really does. I don't think anything at this point will get Dennis Allen fired before the end of the season. And I know how crazy that sounds, because the start that the Saints had last week, I thought if the Saints get blown out, which that's what it was looking like.
Yeah.
And you throw in the first quarter atmosphere of the crowd as well. I was like, there's no way Dennis Allen makes it out of the building if this continues. I guess I'll say drop, with an asterisk. If they get blown out, if they lose like 35 to like 7 or something in that realm, completely different story. But if they lose like in a very classic New Orleans Carolina fashion ball game that ends on a last second field goal, we've seen that plenty of times over the years, right? I don't see it happening. But if they get their ass handed to them, then we might be having a different discussion.
I'll tell you, if the way I see it, first of all, I agree with you if they get blown out. But even if they lose a close one, you're losing to a 1-11 division rival at home. I don't think that it will be. I don't think that they'd be able to keep the mob from overrunning. I'm using hyperbole here, and speaking metaphorically, but I don't think that they would be able to do anything to keep the mob from overrunning the gates of the castle, to keep the army from overrunning the walls of the Alamo. Whatever metaphor you want to use, I think that Dennis Allen is gone if they lose to the Carolina Panthers. And I know I've said a million times the Saints aren't going to make a move with their head coach in the middle of the season. But you see these these ridiculous Fire Dennis Allen t-shirts going around, and fans, hell, some media encouraging fans to go in and boo or stop buying merchandise or sell your tickets to opposing fans. That's starting to hit the Saints in the pocketbook now. So now you're talking a business consequence. I think if they lose to Carolina, they just might make a move.
Put me on the list of media. I don't want to go as far as saying like sell your tickets to the opposing team because I've never been a fan of that.
Right.
Put me on that list of go boo.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
By all means, like go do it. If you are unhappy with the product, if you are spending thousands of dollars on every year, go boo. And that even goes for you guys that are looking and going, well, I paid for Sunday ticket, but for $7 I could get into the game. I might do that. I spent hundreds of dollars on Sunday ticket this year. All right, last dot or drop. Dot or drop. Jimmy Graham finds the end zone for the third time this year against the Carolina Panthers.
Dot, because why not? Juwan Johnson is having an absolutely miserable season. You notice after his fifth drop in the last two games, they were targeting Foster Moreau on those tight end patterns instead of Juwan. I think, and you said it before, and I agree with you. I believe that Jimmy Graham will officially retire for good after this year. I think he's going out a New Orleans Saint. This is one of the final Saints home games for him, if that is indeed the case. And I think the team will give him an opportunity or two. I could see Jimmy Graham scoring a touchdown, and he's torched the Carolina Panthers throughout a brilliant career too. So I'm going to dot that, and Jimmy Graham scores a touchdown.
Can I just say all I want for Christmas, especially if we get towards the latter part of the season and the Saints become mathematically, eliminated. I know he said he won't do it because there's a flag and it affects the team. But if the man scores one of these games, can we just, for the goodbye gift from Jimmy Graham, can we just get a dunk again?
I want it to.
I do, because if he does retire at the end of the year, which I fully expect him to, it's kind of one of those weird things where he comes back, doesn't produce a whole lot, mostly because he's inactive for half the season. But even just him coming back, it was like the prodigal son. He came home. He righted his wrongs. Because there are so many people that were still upset with how it all played out back in almost 10 years ago. That's crazy. Almost 10 years ago. Super unhappy. But he comes home and all is forgiven. Even if he only if he has 2 catches for 2 touchdowns this year, all is forgiven. We can forgive Jimmy for the 10 years he forgot where his home was. And that I think it's a really underrated story. So yes, as the parting gift, just make the field goal post go crooked again. I was at that game. The craziest part of that game was there was nothing from the PA announcers on what was going on. So for like 30 minutes, okay, it was like 30 minutes of a delay, but for the first couple minutes, you're like, what happened? What's going on? And then you're like, oh, they can't kick the extra point. So anyway, all right, hit me with the last dot or drop, and we'll get these people out here. Let's see. Hold on. DJ throws this out here. My cousin spent $25K for season tickets, and now he's scratching his head for next year.
I'd be doing more than scratching my head, man.
That's a prime example of go boo your head off.
Yeah.
You can sell your tickets. If you can recoup any of that money, recoup your money.
Right.
But if you can't, go boo your head off.
Daughter drop. The Saints need a 100 yards rushing, 100 yards receiving. The Saints need a 100 yard game from Alvin Kamara to win this Sunday.
When was the last time we've had an 100 game from Alvin Kamara?
Been a while.
I don't think they need it, so I'll drop it. I don't think they need it. It's welcomed with open arms. I don't think they need it, though.
Does he have to come close with all the injuries in the receiving core and the way Derek's playing, etc.?
I think the Saints need about 150 total yards. I don't think they need 200. And the reason I say that is not because the Saints offense is like magical. I don't think they're going to just magically be good. I just think the Panthers offense is that bad. Like, realistically, if the Saints put 20 on the board, they're going to be fine. In my mind. And that means the defense plays well enough.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But in my mind, if they can get in the end zone twice, they're going to be okay. Get in the end zone twice, the group hit a couple field goals. You're going to be fine.
Okay.
Unless for whatever reason, Bryce Young decides to be like 2011 RG3, then I think the Saints will be okay.
That's fair.
We have a lot of questions, and I know you can't see the comments.
Right.
We've had a lot of questions, and I'm just going to address it. We are not avoiding your questions by any means about coaches, firings, ownership, personnel changes. Should the Saints draft this guy? We're not avoiding those on purpose by any means. And I threw up a lot less comments tonight than I normally do. So I think we actually had like a good, solid exchange conversations between the two of us. Bob and I have said it's really hard to especially the current state of the Saints. Maybe some of those questions about draft picks and stuff, like last year, the year before, we're answering at this point in the season because we have an idea of, okay, the Saints are here and these are their needs and they're still contending or there's still that playoff window. This year is really different. And this year is really hard because until we know for sure whether Dennis Allen is getting pink slipped or not at the end of the year, we have no idea what direction this team's going to go.
Yeah, folks, it's 100% pointless to even speculate on the draft until you know who your coach is going to be. And you don't know who your coach is going to be because we do think, I think universally, that Dennis Allen is done after this year. But what if? Unlikely, but what if the Saints run the table and doing so would win the NFC South? Then they get into the playoffs and they win a playoff game or 2 playoff games. You're not going to fire Dennis Allen then. What if Derek Carr is a magic fuel injector for that run, which he would have to be if they go on it? Then you're not going to replace the quarterback position. What if Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, they dip their toe into the fountain of youth, and all of a sudden we're not talking about them needing to address those positions anymore because maybe Cam and Demario have a little bit left after all. As Brendan said, it's 100% point. I love to talk about that too. It's one of the things one of the reasons I love the off season, especially when you're a bad football team. But it's pointless to have it right now. It just is.
Well, and even coaching replacements, like Bob said. I mean, we've been shocked that at multiple personnel moves over the last year or two, players, coaches coming back, coaches leaving. What stops the Saints from bringing them back, even if they don't make the playoffs? We don't know. And also, we're in a situation where if Da gets pink slipped at the end of the year, the Saints could absolutely blow this thing up. And at that point, that's a completely different viewpoint on who we think the Saints could get as a head coach, who the Saints could draft, than it would be then.
Yep.
And Bob made a good point last week, and I'm going to throw it out there as we close the show just to tease you guys a little bit. If Da gets let go, there is no guarantee Derek Carr remains the quarterback here either. Those guys are, I don't want to say mutually exclusive by any means, but Da handpicked his quarterback. So if DA's not here and the Saints hire another head coach and he goes, I don't want Derek Carr, there's no guarantee he's the starter next year. So you have to keep that in mind too when we're talking about the Saints could be picking top 10 and potentially looking at quarterback. Like, there are so many different things. We'll get to those as we have more certainty. We could start answering those questions if the Saints lose to Carolina and Da gets fired.
Absolutely.
As soon as we have an answer on what's going on with the coaching staff going into next year, happy to answer those questions. Happy to talk about it. But for now, as crazy as it sounds, the Saints could still make the playoffs. And we just don't know. We have no idea. I'll say this as well, because you said Derek Carr goes on a magic run and the Saints make the playoffs and he'd have to. I'm still in the boat at this point in the year. Switch it up. We talked about it off the air. I'll throw it out here. Give me Jason. Give me something that's going to inject some energy into this offense.
Well, especially if Derek's not 100%, but as long as Da is cluelessly wandering those sidelines, Derek Carr is going to be the quarterback, flat out.
That's what we got. Bob, we're going to be back on Sunday morning for a little bit of a pregame show. No postgame next week. Hopefully the Saints do win, because the other thing is the postgames we've done have been sad.
Yeah.
Postgame. So Saints, if they win next week, maybe we just don't do postgames. Maybe we're the bad luck. I don't know.
Maybe. Possible.
But we got pregame at 11:30 Eastern time on Sunday. Let's until then, where can people read your work as you continue to preview this game, continue to keep everybody up to date with injuries, as that injury novel, not list, continues?
Folks, thank you for tuning in to our Thursday night broadcast of the Bayou Blitz. And make sure you have your friends, your family, yourself, if you're not already a part of, join the Bayou Blitz Facebook group and the Bayou Blitz Twitter page at Bayou Blitz Pod. You can also follow me personally, Bob Rose, ROSE, on Facebook, at Bobby R 2613 on Twitter, and as always, all of my works not only on my personal page, but through the Saints News Network, at Saints News on Twitter, and the SI.com New Orleans Saints team site.
Myself, you can follow me on virtually everything at BT Boylan. Bob, as weird as this year has been for us covering this team, I have to say, all the people that consistently show up, DJ, Anna, Eric, I saw you hopped in here a little late, but Eric's been in here, Gumbo's in here, Jerry's been in here. All of you guys have been wonderful.
Love you.
Every single week. Love the questions that you guys ask. Love the interaction you guys give us. And we're excited. Even if the Saints are going to be bad, we're still going to be here. Bob, I think Bob said it like this the other week. If the Saints may not show up every week, but Bob and Brendan will on the Bayou Blitz podcast. So we thank you so much for hanging out. So Eric said, I'm rolling back home to Dallas Fort Worth for the weekend. Great show. Be safe on those roads, Eric. I know you're traveling a lot. So be careful as you drive, especially as it gets colder. But thanks for always tuning in, even when you're on the road. That's crazy. We really appreciate that. And I know
Yeah,
I'm
for sure.
on the road a lot too. So we really appreciate you guys. Like I said, Bob and I will be back Sunday morning. Hopefully we get some good injury news between then in regards to the Saints being a little bit more healthy. Bob, hopefully it gets warmer up there for you guys because it's been cold here. I know it's been cold there. I will soak up the sun for you.
Thanks.
To radiate those sun waves somewhere up the coast to Pennsylvania. But until Sunday, guys, I hope you guys find some peace, spread love, practice positivity. Follow Bob and the Saints News Network throughout the week. We'll see you on Sunday. Who dat?
Night.